Welcome back, Fins Nation. We got a special treat for you tonight. We are going to pick the brain of someone whose opinion I respect a lot, and I know just based on the pre-chat before we went live here, EM's opinion of him has gone through the roof based on their similar evaluations of Justin Herbert. But this man, he played football in college. He was a quarterback in college. You can follow him on Twitter at QB Film Room. He does isolation series of all these guys that are out, but he goes further in depth than just the film analysis. He gives you their education, how they fit with certain coaches. He goes really in depth. He's got a draft guide coming out real soon, and I encourage you all to go check it out. Go check him out on Twitter. Go follow the links and go pre-order that draft guide, because I'm going to tell you, it's going to be something worth your time and also worth your money. But without further ado, let's bring in Bryan Trulen of Quarterback Film Room. Hi, Bryan.
Hey, guys.
Right?
How you doing, bro?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for the glowing intro.
No problem, brother. I did my best. I helped it live up to expectations. So one of the big topics, obviously, in Dolphin land right now is the quarterback situation, because we have the 5, the 18th, and the 26th picks in the first round. We have 14 picks total in the 2020 draft. We also have 2 first-round picks next year. The general consensus is that we're going to get a quarterback this year, more specifically one of the top 4 guys being Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, and Jordan Love. But before we get into all of that, can you tell us and everyone watching a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I certainly can. So I was a quarterback myself. Okay. So I played in high school. I played through youth football all the way up. And I also played in college like yourself. And I was a backup primarily. And I was undersized too. Okay. I was short. I was not that athletic. Okay. So I had to find ways on how to beat the defense. Okay. So I really started studying the game from an early age, X's and O's, and all that stuff. And, over the course of time, I was really able to dig deeper into the quote unquote minute details, okay, that are so important as you get up in college and obviously in the National Football League, because it's these smaller details that for instance, not like the general fan may not actually realize. So I've always loved that, aspect, of the sport. And I've always loved to really study quarterback play. So,
yeah. And you know what, brother? Same scenario for me. I was a backup quarterback. I played 3-down football out here in Canada, though. Yeah. I started in high school, obviously, but I was a backup primarily in college. And same thing as you, man. I'm about 5'10" and a half. I didn't, I wasn't going out and there wasn't a blazing 40. I had to basically depend on studying and my arm. That's the one thing. I played baseball when I was younger and I had a strong arm. So I totally get where you're coming from, man. You were one of those hard workers that always had to be the hardest working guy in the room, man. And I think that's why you notice it when you watch your how you break down film, man. It's fantastic. I can't say it enough, man. You're good at what you do.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Anything you got to ask EM in terms of that?
Well, I've never played the quarterback position myself. I played safety all the way up to high school, and similar to you guys, I just didn't have the athleticism to take it further than that. Yeah. But I've always inquired about the details of the game, similar to you guys. But I tend to favor, obviously, for obvious reasons, I tend to favor the defense more so than offense. But football as a whole, I have an insatiable appetite for the details of the game. So yeah.
Just a couple of film junkies talking football.
Right? Yeah.
What made you translate what you learned as a player into starting Quarterback Film Room? Like, we already know you're a student of the game. Was this just wanting to pass on your knowledge and what you know to people on social media and out there in the world?
So it's interesting. I was a player after college. Okay. I played semi-pro still for about 5 or 6 years. While I was playing that, I was working for this software company, okay, which was a startup player in the sports video, realm of things. So a lot of the ideas for the design of what I do now here at Quarterback Film Room, and a lot of the concepts were actually pulled from my experience working for the software company. And so that was more so the genesis of starting Quarterback Film Room. And then, as you alluded to, I had, I think all three of us have this, insatiable appetite for the sport. So for me, it was just trying to find an outlet. And I mean, obviously YouTube was the easiest thing to do. I really got into draft Twitter probably about 2014, 2015. So it was shortly thereafter that where I, branched out on my own. So.
And you had a question about how we grade EM.
Yeah, I had my question. I've always had, I always wanted to, in terms of the draft process and the evaluation that evaluators give players. I know a lot of, different people have a different system. I was curious to know exactly what is fundamentally, what is your system in terms of the evaluation process that you give players?
Yeah, so I try to take a holistic, approach in terms of evaluating everybody, but I have trait grades. Okay, so there's 12 categories of traits that, I deem are, important. So I mostly stick to trait grading. Okay, and then obviously, analyzing the tape. Now, in terms of numbers, those can be deceiving at any level, and especially at the college level, because of all these different systems where they can become super, super inflated. So I try to stay away from numbers, and I try to just strictly grade on traits, and I trust my own eyes, as well. So.
Which traits do you deem in terms of the transition from the collegiate level to the next level, the NFL? Which traits do you deem the most valuable?
I mean, that's a really good question. Now, there's certain traits that you can't really correct, okay, after, a certain age. So the hardest traits to change for a quarterback who's leaving college are going to be his natural throwing motion, because when he enters into live action, he has all those reps that he's accumulated over the years of him throwing a certain way. So one thing that I've learned is that, if there is a hiccup of any sort, even if it's just, like a smaller one, that's not going to be able to ultimately be altered. Or if you're a staff or if you're a quarterback's coach, odds are you're probably not going to be able to change his motion. So that would be number one. In terms of the system, that's another one that I've really, I guess I came to understand that it helps if a prospect has been, exposed to some degree pro style passing concepts, in college. So those two are big. And then, other than those two, I would say pocket presence. And I try to get a sense for if, how a guy acts when the bullets are flying. And of course, certain systems can kind of, attempt to nullify this, but you can see it on tape. If a guy gets nervous or if he gets anxious in the pocket when he has to hang an extra beat or he has to go from 2 to 3, or if there's immediate A gap, stuff, is he going to start to see ghosts? So that's another one that can't really be changed.
For the people out there that might be, I'm sorry, Reason, one more quick question, bro.
Go ahead, brother.
For the people out there that might not know, you touched on pro style concepts. Could you distinguish the difference between a quote unquote prototype?
I know exactly where you're going with this, brother. I love it.
Yeah.
and contrast that with the quote unquote collegiate level concept for the people out there that might not be, well versed in that area.
So pro style, passing game concepts they're on the forefront. They're, a lot more detailed and nuanced than what, a lot of these college programs ask their quarterbacks to read and obviously do. One reason for that is because, obviously college coaches, they don't really have that much time in terms of hours to work with their offense and to work with their quarterback to teach, everybody this stuff. So when they get to the NFL, plays, even just one play is so much more detail. And, every player, has to have a certain, like a certain level of detail. So if a quarterback who's in a college system and it's not that complicated and it's more so like your pop gun spread stuff where the quarterback is really, he's not necessarily asked to read defenses. He's told where to throw the football, oftentimes. So when that quarterback makes the transition, the learning curve is going to end up being just a little bit more to, grasp for him. So if he's exposed to some degree to those pro style concepts, he's going to be able to acclimate faster.
So what you just basically described with that last point,
yeah,
that's Justin Herbert right there. So my question is, now take that into context. How much does it worry you that he's also literally never taken a snap from under center?
Right. Now, with Herbert, it's an interesting thing on him because he was a 4-year starter in college, and he played in one of those college systems, okay? Like you said, he was in the shotgun every single snap. He wasn't really asked to go through reads, although he showed the ability to throw it deep, okay, with both arm strength and touch. But with him, normally – I would be leery, but with Herbert, I'm actually not. Only because when you really watch his film, you can clearly see feet and his mind are not, it's almost like he was in an offense that really didn't suit his skill set as a passer. Because when he was down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, he had to go under center, obviously, when he was being coached by the Bengals staff. And he made a seamless transition to under center play action, obviously taking the snap from under center and not being lost. So I don't think it's a huge issue with him. He's the outlier in this case.
And do you think he's the outlier because of how smart he is?
Totally
I think that has, yeah. I mean, I certainly do.
Like if he didn't have a 4.01 GPA and a degree in biology, you'd probably be saying it's going to be harder for him to learn, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's probably the smartest quarterback in this class. Okay. Either him or Joe Burrow, but I'm probably taking Herbert with the 4.0 bio major, resume there. But yeah, so I think that has something to do with it. And I just think he's a natural athlete too. And he's just able to pick this stuff up like that. So,
do you favor overall Herbert as opposed to Joe Burrow? We might be getting a little ahead of ourselves. I'm sorry about that.
No. That's fine, man. See, I've been going back and forth on it, and I've been trying to take the standpoint of, how these NFL coaches are going to, how they're going to see this thing play out. Because, national media, everybody has been shoving Joe Burrow down our, faces. Okay. And rightfully so. I mean, he had probably the best season we've ever seen a quarterback have ever in college football, but he only did it for 1 year. So, as a prospect, I like them both. Right now, I have Burrow at 1, slightly ahead of Herbert, and but it's a close race. So.
Oh, wow.
Hey,
wow,
let's save that one. Let's save that one for later.
Oh, okay, yeah. We're getting ahead of my bad. I'm sorry, brother.
Okay,
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
All right. So, like a couple other things that I deem important traits, I'm just going to say because I actually had a question regarding it.
Sure.
Accuracy, decision making. TD will tell you that I am a big believer in consistent, repeatable mechanics. Like big believer because, like I've told EM, a natural habit is to revert back to your ways and what you're used to. So, when I see a guy like, another thing I look at, when I've seen examples of, he's running a spread. How are you getting flat-footed in the shotgun, bro? Like, and I'm looking at myself like, really? He can still, but I want to see better. Like he gets lazy at times and he just forget, and he's just like, oh, I can just trust my arm and I'll sling it. And EM will probably agree with me here. Once you get into your 30s and that arm isn't the bazooka anymore, your mechanics become that much more important, right? Like when you look at, I talk about this all the time. We look at Drew Brees and we look at Tom Brady. What's one thing they have in common? They work with Tom House, right? And Drew Brees' motion is very similar, and I've said this before, to Greg Maddux, the Hall of Fame pitcher. It's all about mechanics when you don't have the arm when you get older. And to me, the thing that worries me is someone plopping him in there and the proverbial throwing him to the wolves. And he doesn't get a chance to properly learn, to properly get groomed. Because if you give this guy a season behind Fitzpatrick or, 2 seasons, I got no problem with it, bro. But if this guy's going to be go out there starting day 1, it just – and you know this, Brian, another big factor to being quarterback. And if you go out there and you go out and you throw a kid to the wolves and he starts getting killed right away, at an early Josh Rosen, a dangerous thing.
Right.
So I don't know what you have to say about all that, but I mean that's just where I love the athleticism, I love the height, I love the arm strength, but I just see red flags, and it's just
yeah. I mean I understand your point, but and like you said, with Herbert, it's not going to be a situation where if they draft him, where they're going to have to play him early. Okay, it'll be Fitzpatrick for as long as it has to be. Okay, and so it'll be.
But you've seen the Fitz tragic, brother, and you know fan bases of modern day NFLs. Patience is no longer. Time is of the essence, and you know as well. Probably attested to this. If we draft a guy at 5 and Fitz tragic goes out for 2 or 3 games, people are going to be clamoring for whoever's back there. So, and it worries me, man. It just that worries me, man, because of the wild card factor of what Fitzpatrick is. Like we really saw better structure in his game, like EM's preached so many times last year. But all it takes is those 2 or 3 games, and we have a situation on our hands. But yeah. But go ahead, Ian.
Quick question. It's funny you bring up Ryan Fitzpatrick. Brian, have you evaluated him at all this year, his season this year?
So I watched the Dolphins as often as I could last year, but I haven't gone in depth on Fitz. But I evaluated him when he was with the Jets, hard back in 2015, and then even when he was with I believe it was Tampa Bay.
When he had that big stretch.
When he had that 3-game stretch, where he threw for 1,200 yards and 8 TDs. But he can get hot, but it's it's like you said, it's only a matter of time before the tragic side comes out of Fitz. So
I think in my opinion, as far as Ryan Fitzpatrick is concerned this year, I thought, in my opinion, that I saw tangible, structure, tangible improvement in his game this year that we necessarily haven't seen more consistently. I would say from week 6 to week 17. Much higher level of discipline with Ryan Fitzpatrick this year, especially considering the lack of a running game presence that we had. I mean, we had the worst rushing attack in 100-year plus history of the NFL. And I think he played now early on, there was a lot of question marks. But from week 6, when they reinserted him back into the starting lineup, I think it was against the Washington Redskins, I believe. Again, like you all just alluded to, the possibility of Fitztragic resurfacing. We never saw Fitztragic this year. And I thought I saw over the course from week 6 to week 17, you saw a tangible, disciplined, structured growth in his game that we hadn't necessarily seen in previous years. Again, and I prefaced everything considering the fact that he didn't have not even a sniff of a running game to fall back on. You know what I mean? So I think I'm encouraged moving forward with Fitzpatrick next year. Now, long-term solution, maybe not, but definitely short-term. Right. I think we can, moving forward, another year in his system, another year of, structure and discipline implemented in his game. I think I'm encouraged moving forward. Am I crazy for thinking that?
You're not. No. And the reason you're not is because the more I think about it, I don't think the Dolphins signed him, last year, expecting to, obviously bring him back, after that. I think it was just a 1-year deal, and they were surprised about how, like you said, he got better each and every week. Okay. And he essentially kept Rosen on the bench. Absolutely. And I mean, if you really think about it. So, yeah, but now, now I think you guys have the luxury of, maybe taking a Herbert and saying, hey, sit back and watch and learn behind the Harvard guy. So.
And that's the thing, last year from week 6 to week 16, Ryan Fitzpatrick was number 3 in passing yards. In those 10 weeks, only Winston and Dak Prescott had more passing yards in the NFL than him. So it was clicking. And, you saw Devontae Parker's best ball because Fitzpatrick, one of the things he's always known, and he showed it with guys like Evans over in Tampa, he can throw the high point ball. You know what I mean? So it was no problem for him. But, Bryan, who do you think is the best quarterback in the NFL? And also, who's your favorite to watch?
Yeah. So right now, I would say the best quarterback in the league right now, that's a hard question. I'm going to go with it's tough because there's a handful of guys. The guys who come to mind are Lamar Jackson, Carson Wentz. I don't necessarily view Aaron Rodgers in that, top 5 category anymore, only because he's shown aging. He's been aging. But I would say either Lamar Jackson or probably Carson Wentz. Yeah.
Wow, no Russell Wilson, eh?
Wow.
I mean, he would be in there too. Yeah.
Who's your favorite to watch? Because that's usually a different thing. Like my favorite to watch right now is Kyler. That was my favorite quarterback to watch last year.
My favorite guy to watch still is Aaron Rodgers. Okay. And the reasons behind it are because he can be, both on script and also off script. Mm-hmm. And he can flip the switch between those two whenever he wants. And that's really fascinating to me to, watch a guy like that who can do both at, an elite level. So
what do you think about the comparisons that there's two really? A lot of people will tell you that he's the closest thing we've had to Marino, and other people will also say he's the best thrower of the football we've had since Marino. What do you think about that?
I think it's a valid observation about Rodgers. Yeah, I think it's valid, but it's just he has all those physical traits in terms of throwing the football like a Marino. But the problem is, I don't think he's not as disciplined as a Marino because he has the ability to create off script so much. Marino had great pocket presence. Okay. He could move in the pocket like a Brady can. Okay. But he could not run. He could not create out of structure. And I think Rodgers, being that he can, always fall back on those, improv skills. I mean, he can ultimately become a little lazy with his, on time stuff. So.
And what's your thought of Patrick Mahomes?
Oh yeah, how did I forget about Mahomes? He's my number one guy. Okay, he's my number one quarterback. But yeah, Mahomes. It's interesting because when he was coming out in 2017, I had him as my number one quarterback.
Wow.
And a lot of people,
ahead of Deshaun, eh?
Oh yeah,
ahead of Deshaun.
I had Mahomes 1, Chad Kelly 2, Trubisky 3, and then Deshaun 4. Okay, so
oh boy,
I'll admit it.
At least you got the first one right, Brian.
But
Brian, quick,
right.
Brian, quick.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, bro. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say about Mahomes is when he was coming out, everybody was so focused on his sandlot nature and how it seemed like he was just, for a lack of a better term, winging it out there, but they missed his intelligence. They missed the anticipation stuff. So
that was gonna be my question about Mahomes.
Yeah.
Everyone gets so caught up in his obscene arm talent, arm strength,
right.
for obvious reasons. But in terms of mechanically, the structure of his game, in terms of being in a pocket, applying his mechanics, reading the field, and the distribution of the football, where would you rate him? What level would you rate him in terms of? Because overall, you compare different quarterbacks for different reasons. But do you consider, when you say he's the best, do you mean, where would you compare those aspects of his game to like your top 5 guys? You know what I mean? Some quarterbacks rely more on improvisation, like you alluded to. But with Mahomes, I find that people get so caught up in his athletic ability as opposed to the mental aspect of the game. So where would you rate where would you rate those aspects of his game, that aspect of his game?
Yeah, so for Mahomes, I would, I think that's, actually the basis of everything for him, even though everybody sees the excitement and they see him running around, but everything starts with his mind. And when you're playing for an Andy Reid, he demands that of you. Okay. So, so I think that's first and foremost with him. Now, he was a 3-sport athlete in high school. Okay. So he's a natural athlete and he has great sense for space and for being on time and in rhythm. Okay. So I think that is, essentially the building blocks for his game are, how he sees the field pre and post snap. And then if he has to create, he will, but, as a last resort. And then once he makes the call to run or to create, I don't think we've ever seen anybody ever who can do the things outside the pocket that, Mahomes can do.
So
yeah, I find...
let me ask you this: who's the best quarterback in the next 5 years? Like in 5 years right now, and you look, is it going to be Mahomes, Lamar, or is it going to be a Trevor Lawrence, or is it going to be someone coming out this year?
Well, I think you have to go Mahomes. I think he's going to be the best guy for, years to come, as long as he can stay healthy, knock on wood. So I think it's Mahomes. Lamar, he's another guy who's going to be right behind Mahomes because he showed last year that he can really throw the football as well. And if if people scouted him correctly coming out of college, and I'm talking about Jackson here, he's a pure passer too, okay, as well. And the same thing, as Pat Mahomes, is that because he's so athletic, because he's so electric, you can sort of forget that he's, a passer as well. So.
Anything to add to that, EM?
No, you basically. I'm in agreement with as far as Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
I think there's development needed there from the distribution of the football to all three levels of the field. I think, I think he can consistently only, in my opinion, he can only deliver the football consistently to basically to the middle part, to the intermediate part of the field at this stage of his career. But I think Lamar, I just don't see the natural ability like I see in a Patrick Mahomes or, when you're cross-referencing him and Patrick Mahomes, they're the last two MVP players. I just don't see the natural, the natural ability throwing the football like I do with
you see Mahomes as a natural passer, and you don't see that as with Jackson as much. And that's the thing. I will say this, but when his first year in Baltimore, I noticed he had a little bit of hitch in his release, but I did notice that I didn't see it this year. And that's why I noticed prettier deep balls, because he didn't have that hitch in his throw.
Right.
Like he lit us up on the deep route. I don't know if you saw that. I mean, he lit us up with Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. So I did notice his deep ball got better this year.
But we're definitely in agreement as far as Patrick Mahomes is concerned.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So who's your favorite quarterback prospect to ever come out of college that you studied, Bryan?
The favorite guy that I've ever studied, I would say it was either Sam Darnold or Carson Wentz. Okay. And the reason for Sam Darnold was because, I didn't realize until I really started to watch the Sam Darnold tape, how much of a pure thrower he is. And also was, obviously coming out of SC. So his level, of anticipation was really fun to see. With Wentz, I was kind of early on the Wentz, bandwagon, I guess. And I compared him to a more smoother version of Andrew Luck back in January of 2016. Okay. So he was kind of my guy who like my early stamp guy. I also liked Kyler Murray though as well. Okay, because he, everybody thought that he was in that pop gun Oklahoma offense, and
you could see it, brother. That guy flicked his wrist, and that ball was traveling 70 yards.
The thing with Kyler Murray is he's a better quarterback than Mayfield. Okay, and
for sure.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, he was fun to watch too.
Yeah. Hey, last year I was a big guy. I didn't think he was going to before Cliff Kingsbury came in. Before Cliff Kingsbury came in, that was the guy I wanted the Dolphins to get. But it's funny you mentioned Carson Wentz, because the guy that I've been early on is from North Dakota State, Trey Lance, and I don't know if you've been able to watch this guy, bro. But people are thinking Lawrence and Fields 1-2 next year, and I don't think Fields is number 2 of a lock as people think he is because of Trey Lance.
Yeah, no, I actually saw Lance live against, I believe they were playing Butler University. Okay, It was this past August, so they actually had a game at the Twin Stadium. Okay, So I was able to see Lance live, and he was a redshirt freshman, right? And FCS Player of the Year. But he really, he's the total package too. Like I came away after that game going, wow, he's as good as Wentz. And he's a redshirt freshman. So it's like, Yeah, he's got a bright future.
Yeah, he's
Bryan,
good.
let me ask you this. The top 4 guys in this draft, in your opinion, how do they stack up in terms of, pre-draft evaluation to compared to previous drafts? Do you think this is one of the more talented drafts as far as the quarterback position is concerned, or is it lacking in some,
Because I'll just tell you that. Because I'll tell you this, I've been telling EM, and on our, I think 1 to 5 next year looks like it might be deeper. When you got the number 3 guy could be Trey Lance, the number 4 guy could be Brock Purdy, et cetera, et cetera. I could go down the list. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's where that's basically coming from.
Sure. Yeah. So with this class, I would say that it's not as good as 2018. It might, okay. So the top 4 or 5 guys in this class, I would say it would surpass 2016. It would probably surpass, I don't know if it would pass 17, but it's probably better than 18 or rather 19. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I just put my early big board for next year. My top 6 are Lawrence, Lance, Fields, Tanner Morgan, Jamie Newman, and Brock Purdy. That's pretty freaking stacked when you look at the top 6 that are and another guy, EM can attest to this. I've been a big proponent of Jamie Newman from Wake Forest, and I think him in Georgia, he's going to really turn heads this year. To me, what everyone thinks Jalen Hurts is, that's what Jamie Newman is. You know what I'm saying? I look at him, he's a better passer, better size, throws a better anticipation. He can do things with his legs. This doesn't work. So who's your top 5 or your top 10, whichever you feel comfortable with, quarterbacks coming out this year? And, start from the bottom to the top.
Sure. So, okay. So at number 10, I have, let's see here. What I think. Yeah. So at 10 would probably be Anthony Gordon of Washington State. I like him as a prospect. Okay. But I don't think he's as good of a prospect, as Gardner Minshew was last year. Okay. In terms of them being in the same system. And then as we get through 9 to 7, I think that's the category where, say, a Jalen Hurts, is probably in that range. I'd say a guy like Jake Fromm is in that range as well. And then I think there's about 2 guys who could be considered, I guess, dark horses in this class. And those 2 names are Jacob Eason of Washington and a guy who played at Florida International, which would be James Morgan. I think those 2 guys, have a lot of talent, and they could be classified as diamond in the rough quarterback finds. Mm-hmm. So, and then my top 5, I would go Burrow number 1 right now. I would probably go Herbert 2, followed by Tua. And then behind Tua, or probably, I would say Jordan Love at 4. So.
So you take Justin Herbert over Tua Tagovailoa.
I would, and I've been going back and forth on this, but what I keep coming back to is, I think NFL teams view Herbert like he could become a Josh Allen rather quickly. Okay. In terms of his deep ball prowess, his athletic ability, his size. And with Tua, even though he's got great feet, he throws with great anticipation. He's very accurate. He can move a little bit to find passing lanes, a la a Breeze. Okay. So he has all these positive attributes. But with Tua, I keep coming back to, he needs a system that will be absolutely catered to what he does. Okay. And, who's going to ultimately be willing to do that for him? Obviously somebody's going to buy into him. Okay. And he's going to have full organizational support, but is that going to be the Dolphins? You know,
So
I'm hoping.
I mean, you watched the Alabama offense, right? And
Yeah.
it was like, I don't know if you know, but now the offensive coordinator in Miami is Chan Gailey,
exactly.
and kind of like a West Coast mixture going on there. Don't you see the similarities between what Alabama ran last year to what Chan Gailey implements?
You know, I do. You know, I certainly think he would be fine in the Chan Gailey system. It's just, I mean, Chan Gailey, he's in his late 60s, right? He's been doing this for years. Okay. I don't think he's ever had a lefty. Like, you know, I don't think he's ever had a left-handed quarterback. As you know, odd as that sounds, it can make a difference. And you know, not to say that he would be closed off with the idea of having Tua as his quarterback, but I think he could function in that system. But you know, I don't know. I mean, it seems like so much of Tua's game is quick. Like, his perfect fit would probably be a West Coast spread that had, you know, a decent amount of shotgun. But so
Interesting.
Anything you want to ask on that, DM?
I'm high on both of them. I prefer Tua, but let me say this: I love Tua Tagovailoa. I'm hoping and praying Miami selects him, but again, Herbert is an excellent consolation prize if they don't get Tua. But I'm high on both of them. I think Tua, his overall game, I think it will be, as far as the transition to the next level, I think he will have, it'll be more seamless for him than all the other prospects. I think his athleticism, I think people don't give him enough credit in terms of his arm strength. That, in addition to, like you alluded to earlier, his feet, mechanics, anticipation, ball placement. I just think
pinpoint
accurate. I just think Tua overall, and also he had 3 offensive coordinators in college, so he's well versed in multiple systems. So I think, you know, but the durability concerns are legitimate. They are legitimate, but again, if Miami decides to select Herbert has a lot of traits to work with, a lot. So I prefer Tua, but I'm not going to be upset if they decide to go in the direction of Justin Herbert. Quick question.
Brian, go ahead.
I had a quick question. The reason we're both high on Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Well, 2 questions. One, I think personally Herbert's overall ceiling, the only other quarterback to, you know, obviously I deem him as having a high ceiling in this draft, but looking, you know, down the road to next year, I think the only other prospect that's comparable in terms of their ceiling would be a Trevor Lawrence. What do you think about that comparison?
I think you're right, you know, on that. And I think that the longer this process has ultimately gone on, okay, obviously staffs, head coaches, you know, all these guys have more and more time to sit and to overthink about these guys and to watch more film. And when you watch more Herbert film, you begin to realize that his arm talent and, you know, and his arm strength is absolutely off the charts. Okay. And then when you compare him to a Tua, you can see why these coaches are like, well, do I really want to, do I really want to hitch my wagon to Tua? You know, even though the tape's great and he has the injury history, he's only 6 foot. He can play a little bit too fast at times, almost like a robot. And they start to just play around with these thoughts. And then, you know, a guy like, a Brian Flores, okay, who does he favor as his quarterback? You know, what style of quarterback? Okay, is it going to be Herbert? I think it is. Okay, so I think he's going to be favoring, Herbert. But you can't go wrong with Tua either. I just think because of the injury issues, it's becoming a very hard decision for him.
So one of the points you made, because you made the similarity, you made it with Zach Taylor when you came to because you are a firm believer that the Bengals should probably be taking Justin Herbert at 1. And I'm correct, right? In
Yes.
saying that? So the two things you've identified, the two, Zach Taylor and Bryan, are his academic acumen. So can you just explain both with Zach Taylor and with Brian Flores why the Bengals should take him and why the Dolphins should take him, that connection?
That's a great point. But, ultimately the head coach and the franchise quarterback who they take, who they're investing everything into, they're connected at the hip. And if if they're not as in sync as possible, it's an extremely important relationship, from just a human level, And as much as people may not believe this, coaches are human beings too, right? So they have their own personal biases, and they have a tendency to like certain, other guys, more than other players, They're human. So in the case of a Zach Taylor, he's a more reserved coach. He's an academic in terms of his football background. Herbert's an academic, both football-wise and academic-wise. So I just think it's a natural fit. Now, I'm not saying Zach Taylor would not be able to coexist just fine with a Joe Burrow. He probably could. It's just that relationship might have, a few more obstacles that they would have to deal with. And then with Flores, he's kind of cut from each side of the cloth. He's an academic, but he's also a tough guy. Obviously a defensive-minded coach. So he's a disciplined guy too. That's why he kind of likes, Ryan Fitzpatrick, a Harvard guy. Brian Flores went to Boston College. So with a guy like Herbert, I think Flores likes the style of play of Herbert and then also the academic nature as well. So
you have to say with one thing, because I don't know if you noticed, but that also Brian Flores is a pretty devout Christian. And I mean, as you know, Tua Tagovailoa is a very devout Christian. How do you think that dynamic would play on a possible relationship between the two of them?
Yeah, well, I think that would be huge. Obviously. So I think that could only strengthen, a bond if that happened. But yeah,
do you think that's the type of thing that could sell Flores onto it too?
I think that's when you start to get a little bit gray, and you may be starting to reach when you, entertain that as maybe like a second or third priority in your evaluation process. Like, oh, well, I'm going to be more biased because he's of this, religion. So I don't think that's a key factor for him, but I just think because Flores is a defensive-minded guy, that when he, he's going to be less biased. He's going to be more, objective. And if you're being objective, long-term, logical from the head coach's standpoint, you're going to have to go with Herbert. And I also think the Chargers really want Tua. I think Anthony Lynn wants Tua. So.
Interesting.
Anything you want to add to or ask him about that, EM?
Oh, I'm so disappointed. Oh, my love for Tua. I'm so disappointed. Oh my God. Oh, I hear you, man. I hear you, bro.
I could be wrong too.
You know what he's saying? He's basically, it makes sense because and Brian keeps going back to Flores is just a first thought. Who's going to be the hardest guy for me to defend?
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I agree.
Well, yeah, that's you. I'm not going to argue. You make some very valid points. I mean, and then you add in his ceiling. So, if you are the Dolphins, are you even entertaining trading up for Burrow, even if you have to overpay a bit? Because I'll go ahead. I'll tell you. So the other platform we're on, he has a source in the organization, and the basic info we've been fed over time is Jordan Love is the contingency plan if they can't land Burrow or Tua, and he was given details on a package, and the package that apparently they were throwing around, they hadn't tabled yet, but that was being discussed internally, was either the 18th next year or the 18th, the 26th, the 39th, and a second next year, and you'll notice the 5th wasn't involved in any which way. So let's just put it, would you trade 3 first-round draft picks or 2 first-round draft picks and 2 seconds to move from 5 to 1 to secure Joe Burrow?
Oh, guys, I mean, I would not. Okay, I would not do that only because they are blessed with all this draft capital right now. But if you really think Burrow's the answer, if you think he's going to be your Hall of Famer and you can win Super Bowls with him, you have to do it. But I mean, I would probably hold tight at 5.
I agree.
Do you think the arm strength, the lack of arm strength, because when we talk about these top 4, Joe Burrow is obviously on the lower end of these top 4. Do you think the lack of arm strength at the next level is a serious concern? Because when I look at him, I see a dome arm.
Yeah.
That's what I see. So do you – and I know you think that's another reason why they may be looking at Herbert because of that arm in cold weather. Do you think that arm strength is going to be an issue? Because, Brian, I've watched film and, I see problems on comebacks. He's throwing with proper timing, but there's not enough zip behind the ball so the corner can make a play on it. I see problems with slant route because he's not putting zip to put it right in there. Do you think this is going to be an issue at the next level?
I think it's going to be. And the more film that I've watched, the more I've compared his arm to Joe Burrow's arm is slightly better than, say, a Mason Rudolph's arm was coming out of Oklahoma State, 2 years ago. So what he does is he throws with great touch and he throws with great anticipation, okay? And he's on time with everything, okay? So it actually makes his arm seem a little bit stronger than it actually is. But if he's forced to move, if he's forced to really, stick that, back foot in the ground and fire, I see a lot of Jared Goff in him too. So, yeah, I think he's a dome quarterback. So
that's scary. In terms of if you're mortgaging additional draft capital to move up and select that guy, that's scary.
Right.
Jared Goff comparison? No. I'm totally in agreement with you, bro.
Yeah.
Stand pat.
So is that what you do? Would you stand pat at 5 and take the best quarterback available?
I probably would, yeah. And I probably would, because if Herbert's my guy, I'm going to sit tight. Now, if the Bengals take Herbert, which they could, I mean, I know I had mentioned that earlier today on Twitter, and a lot of people were kind of giving me crap about that. But if that happens, then all bets are off, and I think you got to go Tua. I'm sorry, and then you have to go Burrow, then obviously, but. So
what's your opinion and what's your evaluation coming out of college and currently at the NFL level of Josh Rosen?
Well, Rosen, when he was coming out of UCLA, I was able to see that his feet were just not as quick twitch as you would like them to be. Okay, so he was a great thrower of the ball. He had a lot of early success, as a freshman and sophomore, and then his production kind of trailed off as a junior. So with what he's been experiencing, I mean, it's not that shocking to me, honestly, because I thought he had some holes in terms of athleticism. So he's a guy who comes from a family that's extremely wealthy. Okay, so he's he has a lot of different interests. And when you're a young kid in your early 20s, as you guys know, as I know, you're not exactly as mature as you might believe you are. So, I mean, I don't know if that's something that he's had to go through, but, I still like him as a player. I just think he needs a legit opportunity somewhere.
So one thing I've been saying about him, besides I don't think he's good pre-snap and post-snap. I don't think he has a good line of scrimmage acumen. I think he's a disaster if he disguises the coverages, because I just don't think he's I don't think he's a bookworm. I don't think he's one of those study freaks that has caught himself up. But a big thing that I knock on him, and I want to hear your opinion on this. My opinion in UCLA, he was at best an average processor. And my issue is when you're an average processor in college and you got to make that leap to the NFL speed, usually average processors become below average processors. What do you think about that?
I would agree with that, as well. So, and I was surprised at it too, because when I was watching his tape and when he was at UCLA, it seemed like he was a beat late more often than not, or he's holding on, to the ball for like an extra split second and stuff. And, I was a little bit surprised. And now that you mentioned it, I don't know if he is a bookworm. I don't know if he really studies as much as you really have to, because what these young guys need to understand is they all come into the league believing that they work hard, right? They believe that they're, each of them, they all believe that they're the hardest that they're the hardest worker. But then when they meet a Drew Brees or a Brady or a Manning or, even a Matt Ryan or a Russell Wilson, they have a lot to learn. And you really have to immerse yourself 24/7, 365. And it can be taxing for these young kids who have received all this money. They have a lot of, other things that they can be doing in their spare time, and it really tests them. So.
And keep in mind who Florida has spent the last 15 years, game planning against in practice, Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So he knows what the true definition of a work ethic is. And over the course of the year, there's been multiple reports come out about Josh Rosen, about the game not being serious enough for him. So many things about him. In your assessment about the lack of processing. I mean, that last year, I remember in OTAs and training camp, that was the consistent. The beat writers were pointing that out. So if they were seeing that in his game, man. Right. So and it's crazy how it's just so extremely frustrating how a good portion of our fan base want to hitch the wagon to Josh Rosen in terms of our long-term solution as a franchise quarterback. And it's just frustrating to me, because I think at this point they just need to cut bait and move on and move into a different direction, which I think ultimately will happen. So yeah, I agree 100%, 110%.
So going back on Joe Burrow for a second, because you pointed something out on Twitter that was really fantastic. And I've talked about it, when you look at besides, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and what Joe Burrow had to work with, you could clearly see, you watch a lot of Joe Burrow, even if you watch the highlight film, even for the 2 a.m. highlight people, you're going to see a lot of those passes. There's tons of space, even in the intermediate level around these receivers when they're making the catches. Can you explain to the people how your theory of how he benefited from Joe Brady's offense, and also go into Joe Brady's background a little bit as to why he was able to manufacture this much space in an offense?
Yeah. And I actually, I actually write about this in my draft guide. So I actually, have, probably like a couple paragraphs, about this. But what happened is Joe Burrow worked extremely hard in the lead up to the 2019 season with his receivers on his own. Okay. And obviously the new offense was, being implemented. So a lot of the credit has to be given to Joe Burrow for the work that he put in to be on the same page with, all of his receiving targets. And that's something that is a foregone conclusion in the National Football League because, but in terms of Joe Brady, the system that he was able to design, and he took a lot of this from the Saints because he was with the New Orleans Saints for a few years, and he was learning under Sean Payton there. Okay, so he was able to take the best from that system and then maybe change a few things here and there, and then he was blessed with all these receivers, down in the bayou, and then he was able to basically scheme up anything he wanted to. And because of Joe Brady, who was the former LSU offensive coordinator, okay, now he's the offensive coordinator for the Panthers, he was able to really put Joe Burrow in an ideal position to have success. And then obviously with all the receiving talent around him. But he was probably the best offensive coordinator in all of college football. So.
When you break down what his offense was, where he took it from, etc., it's an NFL concept offense, okay? When you implement that style of offense that he brought over from the Saints, that really hasn't been seen at or implemented the way he did at the college level yet, can you explain to people how much that's going to impact Joe Burrow's numbers, whether it inflates them or not? Because on the other side of the ball, we know you're in the SEC. We know you're facing some tough competition, but at the end of the day, there's still a lot of players that aren't going to get drafted. So they already have problems seeing college concepts. And now when they have to defend this kind of concept, how difficult is that for defenses? And also how much really does it help Joe Burrow inflate his game to make it look better than it is?
Yeah, no, that's, college defensive coordinators, they have to be very, I guess you would say basic with how they teach their guys. Okay. And there's not a lot of disguising. Okay. There's a lot of quarters coverage. There's a lot of single high safety looks. Okay. And they don't necessarily, like you said, they don't see this type of pro style system, hardly ever, if ever. Okay. So when they were seeing a refined version of it with Joe Burrow and Brady and, Chase and, Jordan Jefferson and all these guys, even though they're, obviously able to scout against them and such, weekly, it's hard to defend 5 great receiving targets on a down by down basis. And when everybody's on the same page and you've got a guy like Brady calling the shots, and you're seeing these basic coverages down after down, I mean, it almost turns into 7-on-7. So.
You want to add anything to that, Ian?
No, sir.
I think a lot of people missed that, Brian. I don't think a lot of people really took into account how much that's just like they'll look at how it affected Burrow, but the other side to look at it is how much it affected the other guys on the other side of the ball who have never seen anything like this. You know what I mean? It's like it's the definition of foreign to a lot of these defenders, right?
That's a great point. Yeah. It's a great point.
So when you look at the top 4, go ahead, Ian. You had a question?
So do you think, in your personal opinion, is Burrow more a product of the system and what he had around him, as opposed to being legitimate, I should say?
Well, I mean, yeah, and this is where you really have to get back to grading the traits, okay? And trying to separate his traits as a passer from everybody else's. So I don't think he's a product of their system. Okay. But I think that system is the best system that he's going to ever play in. Okay. And he's never going to be that good ever again. Okay. Ever again. Now, that's not to say that he won't have success in the National Football League, because I believe he can be a Pro Bowl quarterback. But I think there's a certain level of inflation that we're all experiencing with Joe Burrow because of the 2019 season.
And like another thing is, I mean, if I remember correctly, and you probably know this, Brian, didn't he have an online course last season too? So he just sat there and he just studied film all season too, right?
Right.
Another thing a lot of these guys couldn't do.
Yeah. I think you're right on that. Yeah.
And I mean, that's a big advantage come game day, against these college kids that are nose deep in books, right? So do you think out of the top four, being Burrow, Herbert, Tua, and Love, is it fair to say that Joe Burrow has the lowest ceiling of them all?
It is. Well, I don't know, because now we're kind of getting into the intangible factors. And I have questions about Love's intangibles. And if you don't have the intangibles, if you're not wired right off the field, which obviously Joe Burrow is, okay, he checks all those, he checks the character box, he checks the intelligence box. So I don't think I don't think he has a low ceiling, but I guess I would say if the other three are able to maximize their potential in the NFL, they would have the higher ceiling. But Joe Burrow's floor is probably the lowest, I guess. So,
go ahead, Ian.
In terms of ceiling, transitioning to the next level, like the top four quarterbacks, obviously Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Love. In terms of ceiling, what level do you envision them being at in terms of perennial Pro Bowler, potential Hall of Famer, et cetera, et cetera? Where do you envision each quarterback, you think?
Well, it's for a lot of them, it's going to be about luck, and it's going to be about the fit of the system, of the coaching staff. So, I think all things being equal, I think Joe Burrow is a Pro Bowl quarterback for multiple years, a top 10 guy in the league. Okay. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Okay. I don't think he's the next Tom Brady, like you've heard a lot of these analysts say. With Tua, he could also be a Pro Bowler. Okay. But with him, I think the margin for error is less because, like I already said, he needs a great system. Okay. He needs a customized system for him, but I think he can be a Pro Bowl guy. With Love, I consider him a project at this point with a high ceiling. He may have the best release in the class, but he has issues mechanically, okay? And there may be off-field issues with him, okay? But so I think he's a project. So I think the jury's out on Love still. And then with Herbert, I think he could be a solid starter in the league. And if everything aligns, he could also be a Pro Bowler. But again, with him, it's going to be about he's going to have to be more so of a complimentary guy. Okay, so he's not going to be the I guess focal point of his team. Mm-hmm. He would have to be supported by a strong running game and a strong defense and such.
I guess that Tannehill comparison is somewhat accurate at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Reason.
Yeah. Well, we basically say he's a blend of Josh Allen and Ryan Tannehill. That's basically, you know what I mean? Yeah. So when you look at these four, when you look at these four guys, who do you, if you had to label, has the highest bust potential factor? Who would you label having that?
Well, I think worst case. Okay, I think worst. Okay, so let's just say worst case for all these guys.
Yeah.
I think Joe Burrow. Worst case for him is he ends up, having an opportunity to be a franchise guy, and that does not work. And then he goes elsewhere, and that does not work, and he ends up being a backup for, say, like 8 or so years. With Tua, the same thing. Okay, so I think he'll have, at the worst case, another shot to be a team starter. Now the leash may be short. Okay, and then with Jordan and then with him, I think worst case is he'll probably be one of the better backups for a while in the league, Tua. And then with Herbert, his worst case is, I can see him having a shorter career long term if everything goes wrong and just flat out quitting. And then with Love, he's the guy who has the most volatile situation. Like, I could see him being like an elite guy for years, or he could be out of the league in 3. So,
Interesting.
You got anything else you want to ask him?
Wow. No, sir. We're good on that one, man. On that note. Wow.
So, when you take away Super Bowls, rings, everything like that, to you, who's the best? I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Who's the best quarterback you've seen, and who's the best passer you've ever seen?
I would say the best passer that I've ever seen is I was raised probably like you guys were on John Elway and Marino. So I'm biased towards those two in terms of the best quarterbacks and also passers that I've ever seen. So I would say those two.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%.
So let's say we don't – this is Scotty Joe's question, and I'll kind of alter it a little bit. If we don't take a quarterback this year, who do you – and besides Lawrence, because if you don't get the number 1 pick, you ain't getting Lawrence.
Yeah.
If we don't get a quarterback this year, who would be the guy you would target next year in the draft?
Yeah, so I would go Lawrence first. But, I still need to get a little bit more acclimated with the 2021 class. But I would go Lawrence, as of right now. But you had mentioned Brock Purdy earlier from Iowa State. He's a kid to keep an eye on because he is a guy, and I believe he's going to be a redshirt junior this year, but he's a guy who certainly has an NFL future as well.
I was going to ask you too, what do you think about Tanner Morgan from Minnesota? Have you had a chance to watch him a little bit?
I have. I was surprised at how well he did this past year because I always saw him as sort of like a Connor Shaw. He was the old South, he was at, I believe it was South Carolina. But Morgan is a guy who's a pure passer. Now, he's short. He's probably 6 feet in socks, okay? So he's going to have to fight that stigma. But, I haven't had a chance to see him live, but I've watched quite a few games of the Gophers.
So I'm going to give you 3 names, and I'm going to hope that you've watched one of these guys because these are so I fell in love. I watched the game live this year. I watched Oregon, Arizona State. Absolutely fell in love with Jaden Daniels. Absolutely fell in love with this kid. He just needs to add some size into my frame. Jaden Daniels, Spencer Rattler, and Sam Howell. What do you think of those 3 guys? Because to me, it's looking like it's going to be a couple of years of really good and really strong quarterback crops draft-wise.
Honestly, Reason, I have not really studied any of those guys. Yeah. I couldn't tell you.
No worries, brother.
Somebody who I have, let's see. Yeah, right now it's pretty much Morgan, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, and then obviously, Lawrence.
So you had Carson Wentz number one. You were ahead of that. Do you think Trey Lance is going to be better than Carson Wentz?
I try to temper that thought, but based upon what I've seen, he has a chance to certainly be as good or, even better than Wentz. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So, besides Jacob Eason, besides you like everyone loves his arm, and I know you called him your dark horse.
Yeah.
If this guy, because what I'm hearing right now, and what I've heard for a while is sound. Do you legitimately think he's going to be a viable starter? Because to me, he's as pure as a pocket passer as you can get. Because I have him number 5. He's my number 5 guy. Like, I think he's the purest of the pocket. Like, his athleticism really isn't there. What do you think? What do you think a ceiling on a guy like that is?
Yeah, so I think Jacob Eason is a starter in the National Football League. Like you, he's my number 5 guy as well. So when you watch him throw the football, it's unbelievable. Okay, he is also able to move off script. He can throw off platform at the drop of a dime. Okay, so he can stop and reset. Not as good as a Tua can, but he can do it well. And mind you, Eason is 6'6". Okay, and he can still be somewhat nimble. Okay, and he's got a quick release, and he's that tall, and he's naturally accurate. So I think he's a starter. I think he could sneak in around 1.
Do his numbers against pressure work? I know he starts coming hot and heavy. It can even affect him later on in the game. But I've said to EM, I give him credit because his accuracy dips under pressure, but he still stands poised. He stands upright.
Yeah.
He doesn't wane away from the pressure. He has no problem taking it. It's just his accuracy just takes a nosedive. Like, how do you think that's going to translate to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that you can't really change. You can't really coach accuracy. So it's going to be about either when those situations arise, when he has his opportunity to play, he's just going to have to man up and make the throws. So that's all I can say about that.
And who would you take? Would you take him over your boy James Morgan?
Okay, so James Morgan. All right, he is the diamond in the rough of this class. I would probably I have them extremely even. I would take Morgan over Eason, except it's not by much. And I've compared Morgan to a young Carson Palmer because of his size and because of how he's an athlete and because of the way that he's, obviously the hose of a right arm that he has, but he's also able to throw with anticipation as well and even touch. And, everything's on time with Morgan too. So,
like, we talk about Herbert and how that kind of pop gun offense, stunted his growth, right? I mean, 31% of his 66, 31% of his completions came on screens, right? So do you think James Morgan is another guy where he was stunted by a Florida International offense, basically a guy who, if you would have seen in a sexier school and in a better system, you probably would have got crazy production out of?
I mean, yes. Now with, so he played under Butch Davis, right? So he's the former Cleveland Brown coach and also the North Carolina coach. So he was, indoctrinated to a coach with NFL experience. So I don't think he was in like this college pop gun system. He was throwing the football down the field. They had a certain element of pro style concepts in that offense. Okay. So I think he's well versed from that standpoint. So, but he's another case study on how I really look at the numbers. Okay. I don't really, I don't really focus on. He had he 60 touchdowns.
Anything you want to add, Em? I think he's breaking. I think we're losing Bryan a bit here.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just think Bryan is just lagging a little bit. I think his internet connection.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have anything you want to ask or add, EM?
Oh,
Yeah, I think we can hear you, but I just think you're lagging a little bit.
yeah, it's kind of choppy, a little bit. But no, bro, I'm good.
Well, I mean, if I don't really think we have many questions coming in. We got about 25 viewers right now. We don't have a ton of questions coming in, so I guess we can go through final thoughts right now. EM, you want to start us off?
Man, Bryan, it's greatly appreciated you coming through, my friend. Can you hear me okay? He's chopping up, man.
Yeah, I think he's chopping up.
I just want to say, Bryan, thank you, man. It's greatly appreciated you coming through and, dropping a lot of insightful information on, the quarterback evaluation process and different prospects that we talked about today. It's greatly appreciated, my friend. I look forward to picking your brain in the very, very near future.
Yeah, so he's frozen out. He's frozen out.
Yeah.
Scotty Joe, he actually answered this. I believe EM, did he not say that he thinks that Herbert is the best fit for the Miami Dolphins, right?
Yeah, he did.
He said based on the academic acumen that Herbert shares, along with the skill set that you have that you can develop, he thinks that's probably the best route. So, how does that make you feel, yeah? I mean, because we're sitting here two guys. I know you don't agree.
I know, right?
We don't have to get into it, but I know you don't agree totally with everything about Tua. But we do. But then again, we're like, we agree with everything he said about Joe Burrow. I agree with him to a certain extent about Justin Herbert. I do agree with him about how he tried to make sense of the situation. You know what I mean?
I just think,
where are you sitting here with all this information?
It's definitely not what I wanted to hear at the end of the day. But I can see why we talked about this, at length about, and I think we're all in agreement as far as Herbert's ceiling. But in terms
we're all in
of
agreement on the ceiling.
Exactly. And I think, and I definitely, we talked about this on TD Stream as well. I'm not surprised why coaches, not just the Miami Dolphins, but potentially the Cincinnati Bengals, San Diego Chargers, many other teams are intrigued by that elite physical skill set. I get that. But here's where we part ways as far as his Tua evaluation. I just think Tua, he's so much, and we talked about this at length all year long, and I just think he's the most pro-ready prospect that I've seen in recent memory. I just think his game is too polished. His overall game is too polished. Again, he talked about his elite feet and Tua's ability to, to get off platform, reset, distribute the foot, survey the field, distribute the football so fast. And I, something though, to be honest with you, I am in agreement with him as far as he said about Tua tends to play too fast.
Oh, I agree. Times. That's how he got hurt.
And I can, exactly. You can definitely see that on film. You know what I mean? So I definitely agree with him on that one. I haven't heard many people mention that aspect of the evaluation with him. But you can definitely see that on tape where Tua is like a second ahead of, as opposed to being patient and letting the play develop, you know what I mean? And then acting accordingly. So I can definitely see that. But again, that's, that can be corrected at the next level. That is part of his refinement, his development at the next level. So even with that all being said, I just think Tua is overall is just he's the best prospect available. And I think we all know how I feel about him in terms of the potential of Miami securing his draft rights. So yeah,
I know we talked about how Bryan evaluates traits, and I actually had a question. I didn't ask it just because we got into it before I was going to ask it. So like, I'm just going to tell people, and I'll tell you, like, and I've got them listed here. Like, I've got my top 6 traits when I look at a quarterback in order. I look for accuracy. I look for decision making. I look for repeatable mechanics. I look for toughness. I look for poise, and I look for playmaking. Those are my top 6. Okay. When we roll through all of those, and remember, toughness does not equate to injury, pro. Toughness is if you get hurt and you go back out there. When you look at those top 6 that I just named, bro, who fits that?
I would say Tua Tagovailoa.
And that's why I have such a high evaluation, because he is for me. You know what I mean? So, and I do think, I think he has a perfect point about Joe Brady, that offense, and how it affected Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I agree, bro.
I think people really sleep.
I personally
think people.
I personally think Burrow, in terms of when you're evaluating traits, like you said, I think Burrow, because we talked about the lack of arm strength, I do think Burrow is a product I tend to think he's slightly more of a product of play design, play calling, talent around him, as opposed to what. Yeah.
I gotta ask you this though. I gotta ask you this.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Go ahead.
I gotta ask you this. And I know I'm the only person you've heard it, but I'll ask it for the people. Hey, am I the first person you heard that flat out said? Because I hadn't heard it before I said it to you. I think I'm the first person that has flat out said Joe Burrow has a dome arm. Like, no one has said dome. People have just said he doesn't have a strong arm. But I'm the first one that said he has a dome arm. And the fact that Bryan came in here and he said, I agree with you 110%.
Yeah.
That's got to be troublesome. Are you going to draft a dome arm at number 1?
And especially when your mortgage, what the price tag is going to cost. You're talking about giving up an obscene amount of draft capital to get, again, when you're picking in the top 5, I can't stress this enough with the fan base. When you're picking that high, coaches value physical traits over everything else. Burrow had an all-time great season. He's not an all-time athlete. You know what I mean? I don't think he had a transcendent season. He's not a transcendent athlete. So with that being said, I just don't get the infatuation and love affair that Miami has with him. I just don't get it. I really don't. And also the lack of large sample size of consistent play. I just don't get it. I don't understand. If I'm not willing to mortgage additional capital to select Tua, who I think is the cleaner prospect, okay, he checks more boxes than Joe Burrow. There's no way in the world I'm doing that for Joe Burrow. There's no way. I would rather, again, if we can't get Tua, and if they're not willing to move up, I would rather sit tight and just, again, I'm looking at this, elite athlete in Justin Herbert. And again, like he touched on about, Flores's, philosophy. I'm looking at this overall physically gifted elite talent. And I'm like, man, I'm willing to just sit tight because I envision this kid we're aware of his issues and his deficiencies. If we can just elevate the areas that he's deficient in to average level, and that in addition to his overall athleticism, again, I would rather lean on that as opposed to mortgaging so much on a player that's not even. You don't even consider him a transcendent athlete. When you're picking in the top 5, that's what coaches value more than anything is physical traits. So I just don't get it. I don't understand. I really don't. So, but it's good. It's refreshing for our fan base. It's refreshing to hear our fan base, hear that from someone else as opposed to us every week. You know what I mean? So hopefully it was they learned something and it was insightful for them in terms of the overall, the evaluation. I'm sure they're gonna take that. All the Tua haters are gonna take his evaluation about Tua and run with it, I'm sure. But in terms of Joe Burrow, it's good. It should be refreshing for him. So.
So Rhino says, EM and Reason, there has always been one thing about Tua that concerns me. His father seems to be overbearing. Does this concern you at all?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't get why overbearing. I just don't. I don't understand. In my opinion, having a strong family ties like that, I think that's a plus. I think that's something that's lacking in our society today. Strong family ties like that, strong family bond, the institution of family. Bro, I think that's a plus. Overbearing? Absolutely not. That's a plus to me. So now, is he going to be LeVar Ball in terms of trying to control Tua? I don't see that in his father. I just see his father as being a strong presence in his life, which he should. Any father out there that's doing, if they're doing what they're supposed to do in terms of raising their children and being a presence in their child's life, I mean, that's what he's supposed to do. Now, I don't get that. I don't think he's trying to, be overbearing in his life and try to control the narrative and trying to control what, every aspect of Tua's life. I don't get that from him. I just think his family is just a strong support system for him. And I think that is lacking, not just in the NFL, but the world in general. So, but that's my opinion.
I got Sharif asked a question, but I'm going to kind of alter it. Do you think if we miss out if we pass up on a guy like Tua for Herbert, is that kind of similar to Chicago, and not the player profile, but could that end up being kind of similar to how Chicago passed up on Trubisky for a Watson and a Mahomes?
I'm sorry. What's that reason? What'd you say, bro?
Saw the question. I'm going to alter it a little bit. So, would passing up on Tua at 5, if he's there, for a guy like Herbert, would that be, and take away athletic profiles and who they are as a player, but would that be possibly similar to how the Chicago Bears passed on Trubisky for Watson? Sorry, how they passed on Watson and Mahomes for Trubisky?
Take away athletic profile, you said?
Yeah, just look at the situation. Let's look at the situation, success-wise.
Absolutely, it could be, because Tua could turn out to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. With Herbert's, even with my evaluation of Herbert, I don't see Hall of Fame potential with him. I see Hall of Fame potential with Tua Tagovailoa. I really do. So it could be. It's a possibility. But yeah, I mean, absolutely.
All right, so we're running at about an hour and a half. Everyone, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. EM, any last thoughts before we get ready to get out of here?
Man, bro, awesome show. Shout out to Bryan again for coming through, bro. Appreciate you so much for your insight. I know I learned a lot being here today. So hopefully our fan base, if they were tuned in, they learned something, and hopefully it was insightful for them. And yeah, man, just eagerly anticipating what's coming April 23rd, bro. It can't get here soon enough, my friend. Can't get here soon enough.
So you guys too, Friday, we're probably going to be going live after 7 p.m. Eastern. It might be me. EM might be joining me. He probably will be joining me. I haven't ran it by him. And I'm going to be doing the offensive tackle big board, top 5 and honorable mentions, so we can get the roll. And then we're going to probably after that get into like I keep telling you guys, EM has a show coming about signed by Shaq Lawson and the defensive tackle. Big boards, and then a safety big board and honorable mention. We're going to get into the mock draft because the draft is stepping very quick. But what we're going to do here is, guys, we're also going to do player value after we draft players, et cetera, et cetera. But another thing we're going to be doing too is we're going to do more interviews like this. You know, we're not just going to get football minds in here. We're also going to get there's some super fans like Big E and et cetera that, you know, we're going to probably be getting on here just to pick their brains as fans and da-da-da-da-da. So we're going to be doing a lot of different things on this platform. And I just want to thank all of you for tuning in. Haven't hit the like button. If you haven't, hit the subscribe button. Go ahead, hit that little bell to get notifications from us. And I just want y'all to keep looking forward to the knowledge, keep looking forward to what we have coming out. And we are going to see you guys Friday night, man, 7 o'clock, so we can get it done in case TD has a late night Friday panel. We will get this done before his panel. But yeah, man, thanks everyone for tuning in. We do hope you guys took away some knowledge, and we hope that Bryan Trulen was very insightful for you guys when it came to the quarterback situation. We know it's a pretty hot topic right now in Dolphins country. So nothing else left to say except fins up.
Fins up all day, every day, baby. Fins up all day, every day.